Good day, future teachers. Welcome to Edo 259 English Rationalization. So again, I am Monica Apepe, and for today's video, we will be rationalizing 5 major subjects in English in all items number 1 to 3, starting with the English 29 or the English for specific purposes, English 149 or the language learning materials and development, English 151 or the language, culture, and society, English 158 or the Survey of Philippines Literature, and English 152 or the Children and Adolescent Literature. So let us start with English 29, English for specific purposes, item number 1. So the question is, when did the idea for a specialized English program came into existence? The options are letter A, 1970s, letter B, 1960s, letter C, 2000s, and letter D, 1980s. So the correct answer for this item is letter B, 1960s. For our rationalization, 1960s was the time that the idea for a specialized English program came into existence. From the early 1960s, English for specific purposes, or the ESP, has grown to become one of the most prominent areas of English for foreign language teaching today. Its development is reflected in the increasing number of universities offering an MA in ESP, and in the number of ESP courses offered to overseas students in English-speaking countries. So the English for specific purposes, or the ESP, is a learner-centered approach for teaching English as an additional language, which focuses on developing communicative competence in a specific discipline such as the academic, accounting, agrology, business, IT, teaching, and finally engineering. So that is English 1960s came into existence during the 1960s. Moving on, let us have our number 2. Which of the following is the main reason why a specialized English program came into existence? So the options are letter A, global need, letter B, national need, letter C, international need, and letter D, local need. So the correct answer for this item is letter C, international need. For our rationalization, international need is the main reason why specialized English program came into existence. There is now a well-established international journal dedicated to ESP discussion, English for specific purposes, an international journal, and the ESP SIG groups of the IATEFL and TESOL are always active at their national conferences. So in the international collaboration, the employer group describe how they expect ESP courses to equip students with the required skills so that they can participate in the various international programs the target institution supports. So that is the international need, which is the main reason why a specialized English program came into existence. Let us have our number 3. What feature of ESP says that ESP courses are written within to fit a particular group of students who belong to the same field? The options are letter A, ESP is discipline specific, letter B, ESP is goal-oriented, letter C, ESP is time-bound, and letter D, ESP is for adults. The correct answer for this item is letter A, ESP is discipline specific. So for our rationalization, ESP is discipline specific. It is a feature of ESP which says that ESP courses are written within to fit a particular group of students who belong to the same field. So most often than not, ESP courses are written to fit a particular group of students who belong to the same field of study. Example, if you are a nurse or if you're a nurse, you would not enroll in an English for engineers course. So would you? Of course, you would not. So you should enroll into a medicine field of courses in order to be aligned. So in order for you to be in line with the course you're taking up, you should take it along with what is required in your specific course of field. Okay, so that is ESP is discipline specific. Moving on, let us have the English 149, or the language learning materials and development. Item number 1, materials may be defined by any of the following except. The options are letter A, materials are anything that facilitates the learning of language. Letter B, materials can be in the form of linguistic, visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Letter C, materials may be presented in print, audio, or video form on CD-ROMs on the internet or through live performance or display. And letter D, materials are developed by only experts in language, passed down to teachers as tools used in language teaching. So the correct answer for this item is letter D, materials are developed by only experts in language, passed down to teachers as tools used in teaching. So let's rationalize this item. All of the three choices are all correct about the definition of materials. However, the last option was incorrect. So instructional materials typically serve as the basis for much of the language input learners and the language instruction that is conducted in the classroom. So according to Pinter of 2006, a teacher can also develop learning materials on the basis of the student's needs. So creating own materials based on topic-based planning means that the materials developed for the learning materials should be based on the topic already chosen, and therefore all the activities in all areas of the curriculum should be related to that one broad topic. So basically, all teachers can make materials, okay? So it's not only done by the expert by language, but all teachers can make their own instructional materials. Okay, next item, we have number 2. Below are the scope of material development based from Noonan, except. The options are letter A, the selection and evaluation of teaching material on the basis of a set of criteria or principles. Letter B, the process of adapting teaching materials based on a set of criteria or principles. Letter C, the creation of teaching materials based on a set of principles, theories, and the curriculum. Letter D, the utilization of the adopted materials to the teaching learning process of language. So the correct answer for this item would be letter D, the utilization of the adopted materials to the teaching learning process of language. So let's rationalize this item. According to Noonan of 1991, defined that material development as basically dealing with selection, adaptation, and creation of teaching materials. So the scope of material development by Noonan based on the definition is that we have 3 definitions according to her. First, the selection or evaluation of teaching material on the basis of a set of criteria or principles. Letter B, or the second, the process of adapting teaching materials based on a set of criteria or principles. And finally, the creation of teaching materials based on a set of principles, theories, and the syllabus developed by the teachers. So therefore, the last option is not included because there are only 3 scopes of material development mentioned by Noonan. Number 3. What is material development? The question is, what is material development? So the options are letter A, material development is procedure that involves measuring the value or potential value of a set of learning materials. Letter B, material development is basically dealing with selection, adaptation, and creation of teaching materials. Letter C, material development refers to the application of some strategies to make the textbook more effective and flexible. And letter D, material development is a process that creates growth, progress, positive change, or the addition of physical, economic, environmental, social, and demographic components. So the answer for this item would be letter B, material development is basically dealing with selection, adaptation, and creation of teaching materials. For our rationalizations, as the definition says, material development is basically dealing with the selection, adaptation, and creation of teaching materials. That is according to Noonan of 1991. So in practice, a focus on evaluation, adaptation of published materials, and creation of development of teaching materials by the teacher in line with the existing syllabus. So it should always be in line with the existing syllabus. Okay, next we have English 151, or the language, culture, and society, item number 1. A social position that an individual occupies in a society. So the options are letter A, ascribe status, letter B, role, letter C, master status, and letter D, status. So the correct answer for this item would be letter D, status. For our rationalization, as the definition says, status is a social position that an individual occupies in a society. So social status, also called status, the relative rank that an individual holds with attendant rights, duties, and lifestyle in a hierarchy based upon honor or prestige. So status may be ascribed, that is, assigned to individuals at birth without reference to any innate abilities, or achieve requiring special qualities and gain through competition and individual effort. Okay, so the word status implies social stratification on a vertical scale. People may be said to be occupy high positions when they are able to control, or by order or by influence, that other people's conduct, and etc. So relative status is a major factor in determining the way people behave toward each other. So that is status as a social position that the individual occupies in a society. Moving on, we have number 2. In the Philippines, the middle income classes are. The options are letter A, between 2 and 4 times the poverty line. Letter B, between 4 and 7 times the poverty line. Letter C, between 7 and 12 times the poverty line. And finally, letter D, between 12 and 20 times the poverty line. So the correct answer for this item is letter A, between 2 and 4 times the poverty line. For our rationalization, in the Philippines, the middle income classes are between 2 and 4 times the poverty line. So in other words, those belonging to the middle income class are families or persons belonging to families that have incomes between 2 and 4 times the poverty line. So in 2017, a family of 5 would thus be middle income if its monthly income ranged roughly between 20,000 pesos and 115,000 pesos. So those who belong in that monthly income range are so-called belong to the middle income classes in the Philippines. Okay, next item. The position or rank of a person or group within the society can be determined in two ways. So the options are letter A, restricted and elaborated. Letter B, high and low prestige. Letter C, achieved and ascribed. And letter D, covert and overt prestige. So the answer for this question would be letter C, achieve and ascribe. For our rationalization, the position or rank of a person or group within the society can be determined in two ways: the ascribe and achieve status. So achieve status is one that is acquired on the basis of merit. It is a position that is earned or chosen and reflects a person's skills, abilities, and efforts. So being a professional teacher, for example, is an achieved status. So you were able to become a professional teacher. You have acquired that position in the society because you work for it. You work for it, and you finally got that position in the society. And ascribed status, on the other hand, is beyond an individual's control. It is not earned, but rather is something people are either born with or have no control over. Examples of ascribed status includes sex, race, and age. So ascribed status is something that you don't have control over, or you don't have the control of that. So that best example is the sex, race, and age. So you don't born to choose whether you want to be a girl or a boy. Of course, that is unpredictable until the day you were born, or perhaps having a ultrasound session. In that way, you will know what is the sex of your child. Okay, moving on. Children usually have more ascribed statuses than adults, since they do not usually have a choice in most matters. So this is what I'm saying about. Okay, so that is the two ways and how to determine the position or rank of a person within the group or society. It is by the ascribe and achieve status. Okay, next subject, we have the English 152, are the children and adolescent literature. Okay, let us start with number 1. The 7 Days by Eve Ainsworth, Butter by Erin Lange, and Asking for It by Louisa O'Neill are recommended YA books or young adult books. So the question is, what genre do they belong? The options are letter A, family, letter B, substance, letter C, thriller, and letter D, relationships and bullying. So the correct answer for this item would be letter D, relationships and bullying. Okay, so for the rationalization, The 7 Days by Eve Ainsworth, Butter by Erin Lange, and Asking for It by Louisa O'Neill are recommended young adult books. These books belongs to the genre of relationships and bullying. So relationships and bullying is a type of young adult genre that's about from best friends to romantic partners. Relationships are a recurring theme of YA fiction. So these books also tackle the issue of bullying, which unfortunately is still a common problem in the lives of teens and young adults up to date. Okay, and one that has been transformed in recent years by the internet and social media. So YA genre. So one of the genres of YA is the relationships and bullying that is very prominent in most stories today. Next item, moving on, we have number 2. Young adult literature is generally described as books written for an audience whose age is blank years old. So the options are letter A, 21 to 29 years old, letter B, 12 to 20 years old, letter C, 5 to 12 years old, and letter D, 18 to 31 years old. So the correct answer for this question is letter B, 12 to 20 years old. So let's rationalize this item. So young adult literature is generally described as books written for an audience whose age is 12 to 20 years old. That is the age range that belongs to young adult literature. So young adult literature is a genre that is separate from children's literature. It emerged in the 20th century when teenagers became a powerful force of economy in 1930s and gained prominence in the 60s. So, when the term first found common usage in the late 1960s, it referred to realistic fiction, and that was set in a real, as opposed to imagined, contemporary world, and addressed problems, issues, and life circumstances of interest to young readers aged to 20 years old. So basically, most of the stories in the young adult literature is all about the problems, issues, circumstances that most of the young adults go through. So that is young adult literature. Moving on, let's have our number 3. Who wrote the poem The Owl and the Pussycat? So if you're familiar with The Owl and the Pussycat poem, who wrote that one? So letter A, Edward Lee. Letter B, Edward Lear. Letter C, Edgar Lee. And letter D, Edgar Lear. What do you think? So the correct answer for this item is letter B, Edward Lear. For our rationalization for this item, Edward Lear was the one who wrote the poem The Owl and the Pussycat. So a quick background about Edward Lear. He is a British landscape painter and writer. Wrote many limericks and nonsenses, as he called them, for children. One of his most famous nonsense poems is The Owl and the Pussycat, that was composed by him in December. So Edward composed this poem for his friend's daughter, Janet Simons, who was born in 1865 and was 3 years old when Lear wrote this poem. So this was inspired by his friend's daughter. So that is Edward Lear's The Owl and the Pussycat. So here are the references I've taken via online. Let's check it out. And I guess that would be all for today's video. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned and reviewed something for today's video. So see you again on our next video. Thank you so much.